Welcome to Shop Talk by Elevated Stylist with your hosts Sonia and Jody. We're here to bring you open and honest conversations, education, tools, and opportunities to learn and grow. Shop Talk is the junction of hair, business, and wellness, where we literally talk shop, featuring guests, coaches, experts, and thought leaders in the hair industry. Be sure to join us for new weekly episodes. Hello and welcome to another episode of Shop Talk. I'm Sonia.
And I'm Jody.
And today we have a special guest. We're so excited to be talking about this topic. We have Destiny Firestack, who is joining us. She's a Balayage Educator. She is a trauma and nervous system informed growth coach for the beauty industry. We're so excited to be bringing this topic to the podcast because I feel like there's so much to talk about. And I feel like a lot of us don't know much about what trauma informed is. Destiny works with beauty professionals in the hair industry with an heart-centered focus on embodiment for healing and growth. Her experience behind the chair as an independent stylist has led her to her own rise and fall and has taught her more about herself than anything else. She offers one-on-one growth coaching and also offers an elevated embodiment workshop where she delivers content and bi-weekly live group calls and a community that is safe for growth. Welcome, Destiny. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share all this with you guys and just tell you guys what kind of got me into it and what it's kind of all about. So initially, so a little quick background, I've been in the industry for about 5 years. And, I was always like an independent booth renter. I always did my own thing. I was always a solo flyer. And a lot of the reasons was because I couldn't necessarily find the right environment for me. And growing up in a small town in the middle of Alaska, it's there's not a lot of options, and so usually you just go independent. So I started down this path of educating, and that was really fun to get into. And then I started having some stuff from my past pop up in my life, and things just started honestly taking a really dark turn. And I tell everybody totally transparent, I had a lot of mental health issues. I struggled with a lot of traumatic imprints that I didn't even know that I had, that I was just walking around living with. And things just about myself, like the way I was in the salon. I was probably not the easiest person to be around, to be honest. I had a lot of stuff built up, suppressed inside, and it made me very anxious. And I was always on edge, and I was always irritable, and I was always just stressed out. It was a super manic, chaotic lifestyle. And I struggled because I wanted to be the best in everything I did. And initially in beauty school, I actually got a divorce while I was in beauty school from a very narcissistic, abusive marriage. And it led me to kind of this dark place, but then also the place of growth. And it was really beautiful in its own way. But going through the trenches, I understand what that's like. And it affecting how I did business, it affecting my relationships in the salon with the owners, with coworkers, with clients. That was always my number one. I felt like that was my strong suit. But relationships with other staff or relationships with salon owners, that was not easy for me. I was a very hyper vigilant, hyper independent, very bullheaded, stubborn person. And I think a lot of that came from a lot of the trauma. And I think it was just survival mode 24/7. And so it led me to just this point where I realized I'd built up all this success and I was making all this money, and I was being, I was in high demand. It was all these great things that I thought were just going to make me happy. And then at the end of the day, I was still struggling. And so I chased and chased and chased and chased until I just couldn't chase anymore. And then I got to such a dark place where I just needed to take a step back. I needed to take a break. And I had been to that point a couple times in my life, in my career, and I never actually did it. I would talk about it, post about it, right? And I would never do it. And then this time around, it was July of last year, I started just really tipping. And then my husband was gone for 5 months, just training with the military. But that was the ultimate tipping for me. that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And everything that I thought I had worked on, like everything that I thought years of therapy was helping me with, right? Because it does in a lot of ways, but everything just resurfaced. It came back up.
Mm.
And so I decided to take that like time while he was gone. And I sacrificed my income. I sacrificed having like a super comfortable lifestyle just so I just was me inside my house with just my four walls for months. And it was like my own little cocoon of building me and working on me. Lots of crying, lots of questioning, lots of don't know what I'm doing, what's my purpose, identity crisis. And I think a lot of hairdressers struggle with that stuff. And I think it's it's not easy to talk about because I know for me, all of my connections are online, and this is how you usually meet people is online. And so, I wanted to start sharing stuff about it. I started sharing stuff about mental health. I decided after my own, spiritual journey I went on, I decided to go out and get my certification for being trauma and nervous system informed because I wanted to learn what was going on with me. And then once I spent more time on that, things just started coming naturally in just the weirdest way. People were coming to me. I don't know if it was the way that I was just representing myself online or what, but I was developing like a safe space for people to just come and talk to me. People would message me at midnight and just midnight my time, and things were just, I'm struggling here or what, like I don't know what to do. I'm feeling lost, like I'm feeling depressed. Like, of course I tell people I'm not a therapist and like coaches don't treat, like there's boundaries with that stuff, right? But and I'll always tell somebody, hey, like maybe I suggest this, or maybe, here's some resources if I don't know, and you know what I mean? But I don't know, in that moment for hairdressers it's important. And someone said, wow, like I can't believe you just take the time to talk to people. And the fact that that was shocking to somebody was really sad. And it was like, yeah, because I know what it's like to not have anybody, and I know what it's like to just have to sit with all that stuff in your body, and how it affects doing hair.
Yeah, and I don't think that like we understand the the intensity of that. Like we carry so much of our own, like everybody in this world has trauma, right? And it's like when we're with people one on one, it's like we kind of have to just like leave our shit at the door, and then we have to like service people. And it's like we're not just doing hair, we're also like holding space for people. But it's like if you can't hold space for yourself, you have a hard time holding for other people too. So I'd love to like, for the people that don't know what trauma informed is, can you go into that a little bit so we can understand what it actually is, and like can you give us some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, so being trauma informed is essentially, so everyone has their own worldview. Everyone has their own lens that they view their world and life on. And it's everybody's interpretation of things. And it's not saying that something isn't real. It's just your interpretation, the way that you view something is going to be completely different than the way I do. We both, or we all are operating from our own traumatic imprints, and that affects how we view things. So being trauma informed, it basically just says that I understand the lens that you're viewing from. So if you're in a crisis moment, and especially being nervous system informed is important too, but if you're in a crisis moment, or if there's an activated state or a triggered state, or I'm noticing like self-sabotaging patterns, stuff like that, these are signs that there's a traumatic imprint just replaying in the body over and over and over again. And it's showing up in things like behavior and acting out and decision making, how you are with money, all that stuff. And it's interesting because a lot of our personality traits aren't necessarily our personality traits. They're the way that I go into things is very holistically, and there's a somatic approach. But we are essentially like programmed with these imprints from the day we're born, even prior to that, actually. And our nervous system starts adapting to things. And when we start adapting, we start developing these personality traits around the adaptations. And so, personally, someone who has complex PTSD, I understand what it's like to view the world from almost like two different lenses.
Mm.
And it can feel like you're two different people sometimes. And then that's where someone might be like, am I just crazy? Or do I have a personality disorder or what, And I laugh because I used to think that. I used to think I had a personality disorder or something because it always felt like it was multiple people. But what was really going on, it's about accessing the, it's about making the unconscious conscious. And so
Mm.
when I work with somebody, it's really about, let's get to the root of what exactly is making your body respond in this way. But in your daily life, it can look like, the second maybe you're an overthinker. Overthinking is a huge, huge, huge sign that someone is constantly in a cognitive state and completely disembodied from their body. And
Mm.
so what happens is, when someone, I'll break it down really short, but when someone is like traumatized, for example, whether you know it or not, you don't always know you're being traumatized. Because what happens is when the body starts experiencing something and you have these sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activations in the brain, then those are like your fight or flight modes. But what happens is for survival reasons, your cognition takes over and hijacks the physiological experience, so that you're not actually able to really be in that moment. You're not able to feel in that moment. It shuts it off to help you survive. That's
Mhm.
why we struggle with maybe memory issues. We don't have good recall on things, or maybe if you ever walk into a room, or for example, if you ever walk into the back room of a salon and you can feel the energy and you're and maybe it's not a good environment and no one has to say anything, but you just know something's off. That's your nervous system attuning to the environment. And when we operate from a deregulated nervous system, that's how it shows up. It shows up in our personality traits, it shows up in our character, it shows up in how we run our business. That's why my deregulated nervous system led me to hustling so hard behind the chair that it broke me, because
Mm.
I had this sense of just constant sense of urgency. There was no relax, there was no chill. And
Yeah.
so if you're someone who's just like go, 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 and because someone's telling you to hustle harder, work harder, you got to make more money, whatever, then that's an example of operating from a deregulated nervous system, and that's what leads to burnout too.
So do
Yeah.
you think that it's the trauma that you experience that causes this deregulation in your nervous system and you've disembodied from it? Is that kind of like what I'm getting at, what I'm trying to understand is that the
Hmm.
trauma that you experience, whatever it is causing this like nervous system response in your body, and then your brain is what goes into the fight or flight, so it disembodies itself from you and is like, okay, we have to, for example, hustle, hustle, hustle. So like whatever trauma that you experience that's forcing you to hustle, it could be like from childhood or whatever. Like I experienced that, like if you don't struggle or hustle, you're not successful. So is that like the pathway of how that works?
Yeah, so that's just a really good example that when something happens, a lot of the times, all westernized culture, for example, is all about cognition for in terms of like a lot of education that, let's just say like doctors and therapists and psychiatrists, all of the stuff that we focus on in our culture is from the neck up. Everything is all cognitive, right? But we forget about the body. We forget about the bottom up, the rest of our body. It's completely connected. And so that's why, for example, like as a baby, you don't remember things from usually up until 2 years old or so, because your brain doesn't even have the capacity to process any of that. And
Mm.
so, but your body actually does remember things. That's why babies are able to have emotions and respond to things, even if they can't process what's going on. But your nervous system, yes, gets adapted from even as early as being in the womb. You
Mm.
are attuned to the nervous system of your mother, and so that's how it kind of happens. And then your mind kicks in. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Your mind is supposed to kick in and protect you and go, nope, we're not going to feel this today. We're going to shut down, or we're going to react, or whatever. And then what happens is yeah, we end up kind of walking around with all of these just adaptations to the situations, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's like bringing awareness to it, because I think a lot of us are walking around, just like you said, being like identifying with these personality traits. Like, I over worry, I you struggle, I like, we're constantly putting these these things on
Labels.
ourselves. Yeah. And half the time we have no idea that it is from something that happened in our childhood or at birth, or we have no idea that this is going on. We just think we're these people walking around not being able to, you know, have relationships and not being able to respond and react in a way that you see other people being able to respond and react. You're like, why am I not the same? Why am I having all these over emotions?
Yep, that's pretty much it. And it's just something that everybody, unfortunately, like, I mean, everyone in the world experiences it, whether we know it or not. And even if you're like, I had a fantastic childhood. What are you talking about? And you probably did in a lot of ways, but in the ways you don't know is because your mind's protecting you. And it usually doesn't surface until you have that moment to sit with yourself. That's what makes hustle safe. That's what makes chaos feel safe, especially if you're used to that. I used to refuse to slow down because I was terrified of what was going to come up when I did. It
Mm,
was just me being terrified and running from myself in a lot
Yes.
of ways. Like if I took the time to be with myself, oh God, what is going to come up? What's going to happen? I was terrified to be alone for 5 months.
Yeah.
That was like my biggest trigger in my PTSD was, abandonment trauma and stuff like that. And it's interesting because I would do it all over again now.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad that I took that time, even if it meant I sacrificed my income. And my husband at the time was like, just do whatever you need to do. I'm here for you. I know I'm not here, but like you can just do whatever you need to do.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I had let somebody take care of me. So I was always the one to be like providing and whatever, but not for, but I think just growing up in an environment where I was taking care of my mom, I was taking care of my brothers. I dropped out of high school at 14. I don't have an education level past freshman year of high school. And so for me, statistically, I think in some ways, I think working really hard did me really good. But, if I could tell younger me anything, it would just be to slow down and to
Yeah.
just be in the moment.
I was reading something also today, like Sonia had a good point. Like, even if, or you said, like, even if we feel like we had a loving family and a good upbringing and stuff, I was reading in a book this morning actually, and it was talking about even if we feel like that and we have like, you know, really loving and supportive parents, when we were younger, if we were having a big emotion and they told us that we couldn't and to go to our room and to like even something like that can lead us to feeling abandonment and feeling these wounds, but we don't really look at that like it is a trigger or a trauma. We think like that's our parents parenting us. But if we were not able to have our own emotions or have big emotions or cry or, you know, let it out, and we were told like that's wrong and to go to our rooms for it, like that's also trauma related. Like even things like micro things like that can really affect us along our life.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought that was
actually,
just such a cool like thing to think about, because I think a lot of us are like it has to be a big trauma or it has to be, you know, a big grief or loss.
yeah, there's different types of trauma. And I go over that, in my workshops with people because it's important that I think everybody should be informed on a level like this is your body. You should know everything about it. And so, I mean, not we can't know everything about it, but I try. But I think it's that example is such a good example because that's kind of how it was for me. My growing up, it was a lot of, you're not allowed to be a human being, basically, is what I was always told. And that led to so much rebellion and or for some people, they shut down and they're shy and they never come out of their shell. And someone might just be like, oh, they're so quiet. Like, why? Or so and so is such a quiet person. She's so sweet. But, you don't know that maybe she adapted her whole life to just being told she can't be a human being. She can't feel. And I think it's important that, like, that's a good thing that you brought up because trauma doesn't necessarily mean there's different types, right? But it doesn't mean that it's a one big impact. It can be an accumulation of these, anything that is activating a sympathetic or parasympathetic part of your brain that's putting you into a fight or flight. that's a traumatic experience. Anything that you have to adapt to survive, that's a traumatic experience. And survival could just be having a relationship with your mom or dad. It doesn't have to necessarily be like surviving literally for your life, but when you're a child, your direct link to survival is your parent, and you don't know anything other than that. And we wouldn't dare to think there's anything wrong with our parents, because then that would mean that there's a direct threat to our link to survival. But there can't be anything wrong with mom and dad. I need them to survive. So what happens is we internalize, and then and it kind of just manifests basically until you're old enough to start, developing whatever your personality traits are, this or that. I remember my dad telling me, "You are a child, you don't have feelings, you do what I say." And that was just ingrained into me for so many years, to the point where I believed him. I didn't even know who I was anymore. It was like, well, then who am I if I don't have feelings, if I can't act out, if I can't express myself?
Mhm. Yeah, that's crazy. I know we don't realize it. We only realize our parents are like messed up when we get older. We're like, you messed me up, right? And we have to go do the work and realize that, it's
They
not
were
actually
also messed up.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were also messed up too. It's a chain reaction. It
It's a
really is. I
change.
mean,
Yeah.
we're so lucky now in this modern day that we have so much access to so many different teachings, and that we can be the generation or the people in our families that can break cycles. Like, I know that I'm one of those people, and I'm sure you guys are too, that you are definitely the one that's alchemizing all of these traumas into something more more magical. There's a new word for you. More magical, so that we don't have to continue. And I'm sure that we will also create our own little micro traumas, because we are still uninformed, and society and life is just so chaotic. It's changing so quickly that we can't possibly know everything. And I think that for me, it always comes down to like compassion, and it comes down to like understanding that whatever situation it is, everyone is experiencing their situation and the environment, and to be more mindful. And I want to talk a little bit about how this affects salon environments, because I know that we had a salon environment that wasn't at all like helpful at one point. We also worked in those places at one point, and I'd love to like shed some light on how we can each individually, as hairstylists, people in the beauty industry, how can we be a little bit more informed, and what can we do to create a better environment, knowing that other people may be struggling, but they're acting out or they're just being a certain way. What are some things that we can embody that can help us like shift this energy, and so that we can start to kind of learn a little bit more about this and support the people around us? Because I know that I can just in my mind be like, okay, I can see now that somebody's trauma is acting out in their body. So I have this awareness, but I'd love for you to just inform us a little bit about how we can also do that in the environment.
Yeah, so in the salon, what I usually the best thing I can say is being as aware as you can with your feelings in your business, because business is all cognitive. We disembody from ourselves even just to run our business, and you know what I mean, like we just don't know it. So we operate from cognition. Business is black and white, it's numbers, it's this and that. But what can happen though to a salon environment, especially, make sure you're in a place that aligns with who you are. I told somebody the other day who asked this, you have to know what success is to you first before you can decide if this is even an environment that's conducive to your mental health and your growth. And if you're in a salon space, whether you're a leader in leadership or you're a stylist, whatever it is, being mindful of somebody else's feelings and experience, even if you don't understand it. I always tell leadership to make sure you're making the time to have one-on-one engagements with them that are outside of the salon. Take them to a coffee shop once a month. Do something that just says, hey, how are you doing? Checking in on them as a human, and leave the business stuff out of the door and make a separate time for that. But just going out of your way to check on them and make sure they're happy, make sure they're okay, what's going on. If you notice someone is acting out, your first, business instinct is to get rid of it, right? Get rid of the problem, and sometimes people get let go over that. And I think if you want to run your business holistically and you want your hairdressers to feel safe, you have to make sure that their feelings are just as important as making money. You have to, because it'll show up. And then when you have like a high turnover rate, or maybe you're not as diverse or inclusive as you want to be, and you don't really know why or what's going on. And it's really just asking yourself, am I providing that safe space for someone, checking in on them? I don't necessarily, I mean, I think that obviously disciplinary things, if someone's, totally just wrecking your space, there's things that you need to do, obviously. But if you really wanted to make sure someone was okay, because I'm also really big advocate for watching for indirect signs of, like, things like suicide and stuff like that. It's a cringy word to even say out loud for most people, but for someone that's been there and just wanted attention, I think if just remember that these people are also your family, and without them, you wouldn't have a salon. And it's important to treat them as you would want if you were going through something really hard. I think really it just comes down to just being a human being. There's not a definitive answer just to help everybody. It's just more of, okay, well, is my salon a safe space? Because somebody can't even practice embodiment if the environment's going to mess with their nervous system. Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Things like that. Is activating the senses is really helpful for grounding people. Some salons, actually, there's a salon here, I'm taking over and like helping the team, and I'm going to grow them. And the most important thing that I want to do is include yoga, meditation, whatever that looks like, to help ground a team together. And then if they need any, I know if you need more resources around whether it be inclusivity or diversity, the Dress Code Project is a huge resource. I would look them up on Instagram. I love them. But for practicing embodiment, it's all about grounding and being aware. But you have to be able to be aware of yourself first before you can help your salon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talk a lot about mindfulness and like being present in your body, like through Elevated Stylists in our salon and through our retreats and stuff. We've always brought this really big element of mindfulness, because I think that we can really just get in our minds and be mindless. And we forget that we have an entire body that is in the present moment, that experiences so much. So definitely mindfulness is one of those things that is a lifelong journey that we can all embody. We always love to end our episodes with a real tea. So it's either a truth, a tip, or a takeaway that our listeners can take back with them that they can use immediately. So what you got for us?
Okay, so if I could say anything to especially the new generation of stylists that are coming through in 2023, is biggest tip would be to slow down. That's my tip that I tell everybody. It sounds so simple and generic, but it's really, everything is going to be there, whether hair is always going to be there. The income will be there. Things will be there. I think just allowing yourself to feel whatever, even if it's really scary and terrifying. If you would normally work 70 hours a week, I intentionally dial it back. If you were working even 40 hours a week and it's too much, intentionally dial it back. Focus on yourself, focus on, serving, but you have to serve yourself. So do things that serve yourself, because that will show up. And I'm a big believer in what you put out there is what you get in return. And I think that the biggest thing is in my little mission to try to help end like toxic hustle culture is to just teach people to slow down. That's the biggest thing. It's
Yeah.
going to be there. Everything will be there the next day, tomorrow, you know. I think that's the true activation of abundance is not needing to hustle like there's no tomorrow.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
such a
good.
great message because I think like we could just feel like tomorrow is never going to come and everything's going to end. We need to do everything right now. We
Mhm.
need to get there right now. I know that we experienced it when we were younger in the industry,
Yeah.
and even like opening our salon very young, we felt like we were working 7 days a week. And
Mhm.
like there are seasons where you need to do that, but I love the concept of slowing down because you can really tap into what it is that's true for you.
Mhm. And to
Yeah.
fill your own cup up, like to make sure that you're doing things for yourself so that you can service others, so that you can enjoy servicing others. Because if you're just giving, giving, giving all the time and not giving back to yourself, it's just that's where burnout happens. So that slow down message is just amazing.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for chatting with us on Shop Talk. We will leave all of the amazing ways that you guys can connect with Destiny on Instagram, her Elevated Embodiment community, which I think is amazing, and all of the other things that we talked about.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being a part of our community and connecting. And we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. And be sure to join the party on our social channels. And if you have any questions, you can reach out via email at hello@elevatedstylist.com. We'd love to hear from you.